All right, so here we are. Sam and Tice are with me. Tumbleweed's here too. We are just the other side of Rehoboth. So over there, way in the distance, you can see the middle school. We just followed this road that goes up to the cemetery. And as we walked up, we found this area here. Now, this is a really fun area to show an example of erosion. You can see how the road is much lower, and then up to the side, there's a bank of dirt that Tice and Sam and Tumbleweed are all sitting on top of. Erosion happens a couple different ways. One way that erosion can happen is with people. And when we disturb the soil and we knock things down, we start to erode away the soil. So Tice and Sam are going to give us an example of how they might actually cause erosion. Go for it, gentlemen. So as Tice comes down, do you see all that dirt that comes down after him? I'm going to get a little bit closer, different view as Sam comes down so we can watch all that dirt that he's going to disturb. And all of this area that once used to be there now is starting to come. You can even I can pull it down with my hand, right? That's one example of erosion. All right, another form of erosion often happens with what's called weathering. And weathering is when the wind blows, when rain falls. And I know that these gentlemen are not wind or rain, but they are going to replicate what happens when we see wind or rain. So Tice, you're going to be our wind, and Tice is going to blow and see if we're going to just look for any soil, any dirt that flies into the air when Tice blows hard on it. Go for it, Tice. Ooh, I don't know if you can see it if I'm close enough. Oh yeah. Now, some of that came off his hand as he was pushing it down, but you could see as he blew, and he's wiping off his face because he got some in his eyes. That's clearly weathering happening. All right, Sam's going to grab the water bottle for us, and he's going to show what happens when it rains. This is kind of like a torrential downpour example right now. As it rains, we can see, I'm going to get on a slightly different angle here, we can see how this dirt is starting to slide down, right? And it's actually thicker down here now than it was up there. So it's not just eroding, but it's called deposition. When we add the sediment here, we're depositing it, this dirt that used to be up there is now down here. So that's deposition. All right, so here we are at a big old piece of rock. We're a little bit farther from school now, so if I try to find school, it's way down there in the distance. You can see Pyramid way over, right over there. And then over here, we've got Sam and Tice again. They're hanging out on this rock. Some people call it Castle Rock, some people call it Ice Cream Cone. Monkey Temple, I've recently heard. But this is a big piece of sandstone, and as you can see, all of this area that no longer exists as being a big part of the rock has been weathered away. So wind and rain and ice and snow and more wind and more rain have weathered it away, and that's how we get these really cool shapes. We find these all over the place in the Southwest. We find hoodoos. That's where something bigger is perched on a smaller little ledge. And now, because this is sandstone, it weathers really easily. Other rocks also weather, but sandstone weathers very easily, and we find a lot of that in the Southwest. And Sam and Tice are currently working on drawing some things in the rock, and they can do that because it's sandstone. So they just found other pieces of rock. Tice has a big piece of cement in his hand, concrete, and because the rock that they have in their hand is harder then the sandstone, they can rub away at the sandstone and make designs. So I'm going to zoom in a second here, and we're going to check out what they've designed. Not sure if our lighting is great. So they're making designs in the sandstone. There it is. We can kind of see it now. And they're able to just scratch away at it because every rock has a specific hardness, and sandstone is actually quite soft. Other rocks are harder. The absolute hardest rock that we have yet found on Earth is diamond. So often if you are trying to create something, you're trying to cut stone, you might buy a diamond-bladed saw blade to be able to cut through harder things. Lasers have also been found useful in cutting through things. These guys don't have diamond or laser, they just have a rock that is harder than the sandstone. And now Tumbles is being kind of a model for us. But he's showing us sediment here. And sediment is all of the particles that come off this rock. So right down here, all of this loose rock is sediment that has just come off of this rock, right? As I take a harder rock and I scratch into it, I can cause sediment to start falling down. Can you see that sediment coming down? That like a little stream of sand, right? And sediment eventually falls down here. And what's going to happen is that when that gets down here, there's going to be more compaction, more pressure, and that sediment might turn into sedimentary rock down here instead of where it was up here. The other thing that happens with sediment is it goes down into lower places. So as I look here, the landscape heads down this direction. And so sediment is going to start to flow down when it rains, when waters run, when snow starts to melt away. And that sediment is going to go down those arroyos and is going to land somewhere else. And eventually it's going to turn into sandstone and get compacted, and it continues on down as more sediment comes down after it. And so eventually sediment turns into sedimentary rock, and that turns into metamorphic rock, and that eventually makes it deep enough in the earth to turn into magma. And then when that magma cools, we get what we know as igneous rock. All right, so we are a little bit farther. We're almost up to the hogbacks by now. And I don't know if you can see Tyson Sam. They're those two little specks. They're right there hanging out at the top of this large rock up here. And here's the cool thing is right where they are, they're showing you right where the water runs off that rock. So when it rains, that water comes down, and it comes down from the way up high over here, and it comes running down here, and it drips off, and you'll see there's an arroyo down here. Maybe it's not clear in this video, but I'll show you in another one. And that water has caused this big dip in this rock. It's a really fun rock to try to run up if you ever get a chance to kind of where they are and run up the side of it. But that water has done more than just that. It has started to erode away some other things. And so I'm going to get a little bit closer and show you what that erosion looks like. I'm going to show you where the sediment is being deposited. All those little pieces that get eroded away, where do they go? They have to go somewhere, right? They don't just disappear. And what that deposition looks like. Where do they go? What it looks like when the sediment pieces end up somewhere else. So I'm going to get a little bit closer and show you some of that. All right, so now we're a little bit closer. We're still got a ways to go, but maybe you can see over here in the rocks, the black streaks. That is from water and from snow and ice that eventually just starts to darken those sections as that's where the water comes down. So as I walk in closer, you'll see we meet a friendly dog on the trail. But there's also, way back in here, there's a cool cave that has formed. So you're going to join me as we head over to this cave. Now, Sam and Tice are up here, and all of the water, as it drops down, you can see these dark lines. It drops down, and it's eroded away all of this. And this is now a cave, or a bit of an overhang that we can walk into and hang out in. Tumbles actually knows that there's a little bit of a water hole here too, so he might be heading towards that. All of the water, as it comes off, it collects, and there's one spot here that even in almost the driest days of the summer has water. And so sometimes when I'm hiking, we know to come here, because what do you know? There's a little watering hole. And so sometimes people will call this Sheep Cave. Maybe there's another one here that people also refer to that. But you can also see along the side of the rock here, this is like about to just flake right off, right? Oh, there it goes. Look at me causing erosion on this rock because it is so wet. Because of that water that comes down and is eroding it. And we even see some green growth down here, right? So there's some algae growing because it never ever gets completely dry. This area never sees complete sunlight, and it's always a little bit wet. So, erosion, but where does that go? Well, it follows the path of least resistance, right? So you can see down here, this is where all of the dirt and the sand is going to go. And at the bottom, do you see larger chunks of rock? And I can see chunks of wood, right? That is being deposited there. That's called deposition. And all of those sediment that get knocked off of this rock area, that get weathered on down, they form down there and to get deposited. And so we've got weathering, we've got erosion, sediment falls down, but what happens is we cause other areas to grow up. So a little bit farther on, it might be hard to see in the camera, just in the lighter area over there, there's a whole bunch of pieces of larger wood, right? And that wood's going to help to catch and collect any of the sand, and it's going to start to form an area there where it's not as low, right? It's going to more easily catch onto the sediment, and we're going to see that area start to grow in years to come. All right, so here come the two intrepid explorers making their way down. Isn't that cool how you can see this line here? This line of, it's almost like a line of white that comes across, and as we come down here, this is all like calcium buildup from this water that's coming down. Pretty cool. All right, so Tyson and Sam are working on deposition right now. So this giant rock that you see that they're pushing and pushing and pushing against with their feet, with their hands, it's not moving, but it fell off over here, and so somehow water is stronger than these two guys, and that water eventually pushed it off from up here where it used to once rest, and it now lays here. And this is an example of deposition, right? It's been deposited there, added to it. They're seeing if they can move it, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen today. Maybe they'll go do some arm weightlifting and come back another day feeling a little bit stronger. But as you can see, there's even more, and this is part of a trail here. All of these rocks that have fallen have helped make this trail go this direction, right? We see a bunch of fallen rocks behind them. We see more on the way down, right? So when sediment falls in land somewhere, we call that deposition. It gets deposited, much like a math term. All right, so here's an example of this rock, this sandstone. Do you see all the cracks in it? Do you see all the spots where it's about ready to just give way? Up here, it's just full of holes. Sam is going to try his best, once again, to be a human example of erosion. So I'm going to back away so it doesn't fall down on me. But he's thinking that he might be able to cause some erosion.
Need help?
Oh. He's so strong. Look at that. Can like cause rock to fall with just a flick of his fingers. So powerful. Bigger chunks too. Watch out, Tumbles. Coming down at you. Yeah. So this is what happens over time, right? And this is how we get the rocks shaped that we do. So the next time somebody comes down this trail, the rocks are going to be in a slightly different shape than they were last time they came down it because we've eroded it away.